Breaking news. The D.C. Commission, looking at landmarks and statutes, ready for this? Recommends the removal of the Washington Monument.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. Call 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the broadcast. We've got a lot to cover today, but I've got to start with first of all, we had a big win in a case involving the president and the tax returns. I'll talk to that a little bit later in the broadcast. But the D.C. Commission, there's been a special commission was assembled to review. It was called the D.C. Faces Working Group Recommendations, and this was to review the statues and memorials that exist in Washington, D.C. Logan, tell everybody a little bit of what was going on here first. When you see the list, folks, it's shocking.
Yeah, you see this list. Again, this is coming from DC Faces, which is an organization that the mayor and some of the other people involved in the government in DC have put together, so the parks and everything. And they've put out a whole list, a whole document of statues, memorials, schools that they believe should be either replaced, removed, or explained, essentially put a reason why this should exist and to put it into its contextualized, essentially put it into context. And the list is pretty debatable, I'd say the least. There are a few on there.
Yeah, a couple.
There's a few on there that I think we go through and you'll go, okay, yeah, I think that's okay to be changed. I think in 2020 we can look at that and go, there was definitely some evil involved. But you look at the main list and you're talking about the Washington Monument, the George Washington statue that's along the George Washington Monument, Christopher Columbus, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, the Jefferson Memorial. And again, the options that are on the table right now are remove and replace and essentially contextualize these monuments. And what's interesting is the president actually has been saying this for years, and people laughed at it, that eventually they were going to not just come for, look, I think there's been a lot of debate on the Confederate monuments and those type of things.
These are the Confederate monuments.
That's what I'm saying. I think those at least is a discussion that can be had.
Yes.
How are you going to move the Washington Monument? I feel like just the physics of that is going to be very difficult. And look, not to say that there isn't some conversation that should again be had about some of these people, but you're talking about George Washington, you're talking about Thomas Jefferson, you're talking about the founding fathers of the country.
Yeah. So look, nobody is perfect. We know that. And here you have a situation where they are talking about, and this is what's so clear here. It says the federal government will remove, relocate, they're asking for this to be done, or contextualize the following assets. They don't say which should be removed and which should be relocated or which should be contextualized.
Yeah, that's
but the idea that, and the president did say they're going to be, I remember when he said it, they're going to be attacking the Jefferson Monument, the Jefferson Memorial. Well, they are. They're going to attack the Washington Monument. Well, they are. Now, here's the problem. This is a cancellation culture. No, our history is not perfect, but, it is our history. And history matters. We're going to be joined after the break by Dr. Andrew Economo. Our senior lawyer is also a PhD in history. We're going to be joined by Harry Hutchison, our senior policy director. I want to quickly go to Than Bennett and get a reaction.
Well, Jay, it's a city I love, a country I love. The idea that the contributions of George Washington to this city and this country are now somehow worthy of shame, it's just beyond me, Jay. And I'll just quickly say this, though. She's got a jurisdiction issue because some of these city buildings, city schools, yeah, they can unilaterally rename them. But these federal monuments, Jay, she has no jurisdiction to rename those. Those go through the federal government. And just for the record, the Interior Secretary says, not on my watch, never going to happen.
Well, if you just even look at it, Dad, from a sense of let's just take the historical side of it from a tourism point of view.
Well, that's what you would think.
Honestly, this does damage to tourism now. Is what you're saying.
Well, no one's going there now. Everyone's afraid to go.
No, that's okay. Not right now with these current situations, but just the idea that if you take a photo with the Washington Monument,
you're now a racist.
You're now would be considered some form of racist or insensitive situation. That's also the concern, too, because it's not just that. It's putting the seed in there that plants the idea that these things that bring in so much tourism money are now deemed inauthentic.
All right, we'll take your calls on all this. 800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110.
Thanks to your support of the ACLJ, we have had many victories.
The IRS now formally apologizing to Tea Party groups.
The IRS did the right thing by resolving the case with an injunction that mandated a complete change of the IRS nonprofit tax-exempt work as it relates to issue advocacy organization.
If any group feels like they're being targeted, they can go to federal court and bring our case. That's a victory.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history, to take on the IRS and win.
For more than 27 years, the ACLJ has been fighting for freedom and liberty in the United States and around the globe.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this. They're fighting for life at a whole new level to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
Those of us that believe in life know that we're on the right side of history. We understand full well children are children, and they're precious in God's sight, and they're precious in our nation's sight, and they're precious to parents.
But I actually think we're winning. This is one of the social issues we're winning.
The release of Andrew Brunson. He is the American evangelical from North Carolina, held in Turkey for more than 2 years.
They're rushing us to the airport, and there was an Air Force plane that came from Germany that had been on standby. We're flying, and they finally left Turkish airspace. It's like, okay, now we're really out of Turkey and free again.
We're grateful to ACLJ who put it out to these people, they were getting all this out.
All of the people who prayed for us through ACLJ and through your contacts, I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and actually I'm astounded.
We need your help as we continue this work here in the United States and around the world. Join us online at the American Center for Law and Justice at aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. We're taking your calls at 1-800-684-3110. We're going to talk a little bit later in the broadcast about a victory on the president's tax return issue that's been so prevalent in litigation, as I would know firsthand because I've been litigating it. But this new recommendation that came forward from the mayor's office, they put together a commission to review statutes that were
Statutes.
I said statutes. I'm so stuck on the other because my whole life has been a
statues, parks,
code or statue.
Schools. I'm trying to find the list of schools that they're talking about changing the name of. A lot of them share the same names.
Statues and memorials.
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
And it's Christopher Columbus, Ben Franklin. Okay.
I want to show you this is not like someone sent out a willy-nilly list here. This is a full-on,
We're showing it for our TV audience. You're seeing
PowerPoint presentation of DC faces. Will, I'm going to try to find the list of the schools, but they're in there somewhere.
They want to rename schools?
Point. How about is Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, Washington. I guess just call it the District of Columbia. And then, Andy, I noticed. First of all, give me your general reaction to this.
Horror.
Yeah, what you can say, and just make sure it's something you can say on the radio.
Yes, go ahead.
Well,
Andy.
It's the worst that I can come up with that I can say on the radio, and that is horror. Because I am a practicing historian as well as a practicing lawyer, and I see what we're trying to do is to rewrite the past and to take out of context the American dream and the American inheritance. I mean, for all you say about Thomas Jefferson, he's the author of the Declaration of Independence, the President of the United States, Secretary of State, George Washington, yes, he had ideas that are not consistent with what we do in the 21st century, but he was the founder of the country in the sense that he led the army of the revolution against the British. And what are we going to do? As Logan said, just the physics. Are we going to blow up the monument? Are we going to blow up the needle? I mean, what kind of outrageous ideas are we coming up with? And what does contextualized means? That to me is a leftist word for destroy and to denigrate something and to minimize it. This is something that I can't. It's so difficult for me to express into words. Look, the present is a text. The past is its interpretation. In order to understand where we are, we have to look at where we have been, not destroy what we had.
Let me ask this. I will put this in context.
Contextualize.
I can contextualize this, but let me put this in context. So they want these buildings, monuments, schools renamed, all of this. And then we just played a clip in our break for those that watch us on our social media platforms that had a lot of these monuments in it.
Yeah.
Including the building of the Supreme Court of the United States, which, by the way, did incorrectly decide Plessy versus Ferguson, decided Dred Scott. These are all cases on race. The 3/5 blacks were 3/5. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. Okay. Karematsu, the internment of Japanese Americans. Horrible decisions. How do we contextualize the building of the Supreme? It's where decisions are made. And in our republic, wrongs get righted. You correct them.
Right. And this is interesting because actually in the list, it gives you sort of the qualifications of what they decided who should have their name replaced. And some of them, like I said, we can go through all of them. Christopher Columbus, Benjamin Franklin. There's some you wouldn't know on this list that maybe if you did look at their history, you're like, maybe, top Klansmen we shouldn't be naming a school after.
I agree with that.
I get that. I'm in support of that. But in general, some of these names that we're very familiar with, there's a reason. What is really interesting is of sort of the 5 imperatives, one of them is the violation of the district's human rights laws, their current laws.
So the current D.C. human rights laws,
if they said, did research and evidence find the namesake committed a violation of the D.C. Human Rights Act in whole or part, including discrimination against protected traits such as age, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, and natural origin? We're talking about people from the 1700s.
Yeah, so you're taking the D.C. Human Rights Code, which I think, we could look this up, I believe was like some of it was in like the late 1970s maybe.
We can find it. Still.
I say that? I still remember.
So,
yeah, the first one was 1977. So we're only going to go back
under 50 years
from 1977 to 1776. All right?
Right.
I mean, it's not just revisionist history. It's really absurd. And they're going to apply retroactively the D.C. Human Rights Statute to our founders?
I mean, that's what it says. Pretty clear as day.
Well, then have no monuments to any men because only men could vote.
Yeah, but no monuments. I mean, really, honestly, like I said, everyone is flawed. But to view people through a lens of today is nearly impossible for someone who was, by the way, famous 15 years ago. Well, much less someone famous 200 years ago. They also are talking about renaming, and they said this is using the existing process to rename the following public schools. Obviously, you have some of those names that we've brought up before. You have names like Alexander Graham Bell. You have names like Thomas Jefferson, Francis Scott Key.
What did Alexander Graham Bell do?
I'd have to look it up. I don't know what egregions he did. I mean, it could be terrible. I don't know a lot about him.
He did come up with a telephone.
Well, I know that part. Yeah, that's a good part. That's something you should celebrate for sure. We're still using those today, I hear. There's also, John Tyler, a lot of presidents on this list. Zachary Taylor.
So
this is not just applying, though the monuments are the easiest for you to look at and go, well, that's the absurdity of it, because they're talking about, again, removing, replacing, or contextualizing what buildings that are, let's just put our gigantic.
I want to get, I don't know if it's possible, Will, could our team, as we're producing it right now, get me, so we could show it on our TV audience, the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, different shots of the Supreme Court, Congress, the Washington's, all the main ones listed here, the Benjamin Franklin one. Let's get as many of those as we can, and when you get them, I want to be able to put them up. But then, if you walk out of our office, you would start removing things block by block. I mean, literally outside our door. I guess outside our door is the United States Capitol too.
I guess it would open. It would open up some new city parks, Jay. I mean, because there would be nothing but trees left in the blocks surrounding it. And look, I would say a couple of things, and Logan touched on this, but these monuments are why people come to the city in the first place, to learn. Second, many of these monuments don't even belong to the city. This report that we're talking about specifically acknowledges that they belong to the federal government. And Jay, the other thing, and you want to talk about retroactive application of D.C. law, I sure hope this week or next week I don't violate some D.C. law that they're going to pass in the 22nd century or the 23rd century long after I'm gone, because that'd be pretty hard, Jay, to abide by laws that aren't written as I'm living today. But that's what we're looking at here.
Andy, the retroactive application of laws is usually deemed unconstitutional.
It is ex post facto laws. In other words, making it a crime today that something was not a crime yesterday, or telling me without giving me notice, if you walk up those steps, when you get to the one that I'm thinking of, that's criminal, and if you step on it, you've committed a crime. But you do not criminalize activity that was not criminal when it was committed. And none of these things were criminal when they were committed. They may have been antisocial, they may have been immoral. Slavery was a horrible thing. We Greeks were living under the Turkish boot for 400 years. Does that mean that we have to destroy every mosque in Greece because the Turks were there? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it also mean that the Turks should destroy every church in Turkey and make it into a mosque? Certainly not. We have to be realists in our history. We have to appreciate and understand the reality of what history means. History is the story of the human past, with all its dirt, it's good, it's bad, it's evil, it's right, it's wrong. That's what it is. You don't ignore it. You don't destroy it. You live with it and you understand it. And most important, you learn from it.
Well, that's what Condoleezza Rice said, that having the monuments up is a lesson in history. I'm watching, like right now in our studio. I mean, they didn't say take down the Lincoln Memorial.
No, that's not on there. I mean, understandable. Yeah, there's certain ones that obviously some of the more modern ones also.
They don't like, but clearly Jefferson and Washington are in the.
They're the
and Ben
top
Franklin.
two. Those are the top two. Jefferson and Washington and Christopher Columbus are the three, top-notch people that they are going after, really nationwide. And you're talking about again, not only the founders of our country, but somewhat war heroes in their time, and it's very strange.
All right, I want people that are on Facebook and Periscope and whatever other social media device that you can share this, because we're going to start showing these monuments a little bit. And Than, we only got a minute and a half here before the break, but obviously this year was an exception because of COVID. I mean, the tourism was any tourism up there or virtually none right now?
It's down quite a bit, Jay. I mean, there are still some people coming, and they come to see these monuments, but it's down this year. But typically, I mean, Logan's exactly right. These are the things that draw people to the city. And just one point, Jay, as we go to a break here, there are honest conversations that can be had here, much like the protests. But here's what I see. In both the protests that have gone violent and this conversation about removing these monuments, we've gone way past that. We've gone to anarchy. And what has it cost us, Jay? It's cost us those honest conversations. The honest conversations Logan's talking about, those aren't happening because we're talking about removing the Washington Monument. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I think these are honestly kind of, I don't want to say missing the point, but really missing the point of what those discussions can be. And I think you're absolutely right, Than. Hey, give us a call right now, 1-800-684-3110. I am sure the thousands of you watching online, the millions of you listening on the radio, all have a point of view on this and would like to share some of those on the air. Give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. That is 1-800-684-3110. And always check out the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. We'll be right back.
I think what we need to look at is the business of abortion. And the business of abortion starts with a sale.
An organization is chopping up children and selling the body parts to the highest bidder.
The reality is they've been caught red-handed.
The Supreme Court today legalized abortion.
It was on no one's radar screen as a significant issue. That changed when people started putting their lives in between the woman seeking the abortion and the abortionists themselves. At the ACLJ, our film department has put together a very special documentary. We're calling it Forever Changed because in a very real way, all of us have been changed by those horrific events of 9/11.
Radical Islam intends that all of us live under Sharia law. They are willing, and not just willing, but intend to die to make it happen.
Israel is the front line in a war that's been going on, maybe that people in America or in Europe aren't really aware of, but people in the Middle East are very well aware of. It is a generational war.
They knew they were breaking the law. They knew they were violating our rights.
No mass corruption. Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
It was the tip of the iceberg.
The IRS has finally released a list of political groups it has scrutinized.
Religious persecution is a situation where your life is literally put in jeopardy simply because of what you believe or what you might want to share in your faith, and your life's at risk.
The level of persecution is on the rise. We can see the brutality.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s fighting for life at a whole new level, using technology to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
They stood up for us. They fought for us.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history. To take on the IRS and win.
We only persevered because the ACLJ was there.
Our job is to demand that international law is followed so that they can't just persecute people because they happen to be Christian.
It's so important to do these documentaries because you want the history of what took place.
Welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Logan Sekulow. We're talking, obviously, about the D.C. faces the government of the District of Columbia has put out, the mayor, and it essentially says it's time to either remove, replace, or contextualize the biggest tourist attractions in Washington, D.C., the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, among many others that are on this list, some rightfully, but most of them are just, like you said, removing history. And look, that's something here at the ACLJ we're working on. You may have heard about the School Choice Initiative. We've been doing that for the last few months. There's a new thing coming next week. I was going to say, stay tuned. Next week, if you have kids or you have grandkids, or you just honestly feel like these points of American history are important to teach and to preserve, you're going to want to tune in next week to see what we have. It is
Great content.
A different angle at the way you teach and you learn, and it's for kids. Adults will probably enjoy it as well.
So applicable with all this going on.
And it's going to be ready, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday to launch. I wish I had it today for you, but I will say
What's going to be ready to launch Tuesday?
There'll be a promo, and we're going to be doing a fundraiser on it. So we're going to hopefully support the work of the ACLJ, but through it, support the work of what we're building for the next future leaders of this country. So I think it's really important, and we've been developing it for the last number of months, and it's ready to roll out right after Labor Day. So it's something that this just happened to line up right around the same time as this broke, because this is one of the top issues that's going on in society right now. And I think it's important for the ACLJ to always be on top of that.
Yep.
And to always be finding unique ways to help your kids, your grandkids, and you when times like these happen.
All right. I want to talk about this in this context also, and that is, let me go first to Andy. Andy, I'm looking at the, there's a couple of things that we would all agree could be changed. I don't want a monument to a Ku Klux Klan leader or a founder of the Ku Klux Klan. I accept the need for a memorial or a monument, though, for people like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, the very founders of the country that we live in. They were not perfect men. They were not without flaw. No one is. They were a product of their times. They're not a product of the 1977. This is interesting. They're not products of the 1977 D.C. Human Rights Act, however, applying in 1776 or 1789.
Look, you look at people in the context of the generation, of the century, and of the time in which they lived, and you judge them by those standards, not by the standards of today or by the standards of tomorrow. We judge them by what they were and what they did at the time. The contributions that Jefferson and Washington made were tremendous contributions to the founding of the country. We built memorials to them. Greek revival architecture, should we take that down because Greeks in ancient times had slaves? That means we should destroy every building in Washington, D.C. that is built in the Greek revival type of architecture. That's how ridiculous it gets. And let me say something else that a lot of people don't know. At the end of the Civil War, the Marine Band stood outside the White House. And President Lincoln said, I want you to play a song. And they said, what do you want us to play, Mr. President? And he leaned out the window and said, Dixie. Should we now condemn President Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest presidents the United States has ever had, because he slipped up once and made a statement that could be construed in the year 2020 as being racist? Or was he trying to reach out to the conquered and to be reconstructed?
There's a whole history. There's a whole history about why he did that, and Harry Hutchison, our director of policy, is joining us. But there was a whole history of why Lincoln said play that. It was this reconciliation mode and to bring the southern states back into the country. You could criticize it, and you could come 100 reasons why that wasn't a good idea. But in Lincoln's view, there was a reason to do it. Putting that aside, Harry, this is a cancellation culture. When we say that, what are we talking about?
Well, essentially, Jay, we're talking about individuals who oppose reconciliation, who oppose, actually, American history. In essence, the move by the D.C. committee to recommend changes to the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, and other historical assets is simply the first step in a long desired process in abolishing history as part of the Democratic Party's relentless support of perfectionism, including the retroactive prosecution of the past and past historical figures based on the current D.C. human rights statute. This is a massively ridiculous campaign that does nothing for the people of Washington, D.C., except make politicians feel better about themselves. And so next, the D.C. committee will likely decide that the English language itself and math are systematically racist. This is ridiculous.
Let me ask you this. So if you've got a controversial, there's a controversial history with all of our founders because they were a product of their times. How would you handle it, Harry?
Well, you could develop a balanced approach. You could have a bipartisan commission. You could have individuals who are actually interested in preserving and actually interested in contextualizing history. We are not a perfect people. This is not a perfect country. But what we really have at hand here with this D.C. committee is the relentless pursuit of perfectionism. And the Democrats conveniently forget their own racist past. So are the members of the D.C. committee prepared to support the defunding, for instance, of the Democratic Party itself? Are they willing to support criminal justice reforms like the Justice Act proposed by Tim Scott? Are they willing to support school choice, which would disproportionately improve the lives of African Americans and Hispanic Americans? On many of these issues, the Democratic Party, the D.C. committee is found wanting. So in my judgment, this is not a serious attempt to rebalance the history of the United States.
All right, so we're going to have Harry stay for another segment in the back half hour. I want to get into a little bit in the back half hour about what took place yesterday in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. We'll talk more about this. Logan, but do let everybody know what's coming next week. I mean, with our special project.
We have a brand new project from the ACLJ that we're going to need your support. We're definitely going to need resources to start putting out content specifically aimed at your children and your grandchildren. We'll have more to talk about.
And it really fits in with this.
It really does. It's really about preserving American history, preserving faith, and the instruction of it in a really unique, fun way. It's not necessarily what you think of. This is not going to be some real heady, deep, type content. But this is content your kids need to learn, content that maybe you could find handy as well. We're going to help preserve the American history, and we're going to do it through some of the work here at the ACLJ, and we're going to need your help. And there's going to be a very, very cool way for you to do it and see what we've going on. We have a great promo near completed, and I can't wait to showcase it next week.
I've seen it in the rough. It was
You've
pretty
seen the
great.
rough. It's pretty fun. Yeah, we're still tweaking it, make sure it's perfect for all of you. Well, the website
It'll be great for kids
good.
and grandkids. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about it.
It's going to be a lot of fun and also be very serious business, as we say in the video. We're going to have some real deal.
But I think everybody will learn from the content.
I think so too. It's not unlike stuff you grew up with, but done in a very modern way for kids of 2020.
All right, we'll take calls when we come back from the break. Your reaction to all of this. So we'll talk about the president's tax return case and support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. We're in a fight for life that is incredible right now. Barbaric and horrific. This is the New York State's law on unrestricted abortion. No protection for the unborn child. Not only did they pass it, they celebrated it. Zero protection. Used to have personhood protection.
Right.
Now they don't.
That is now all completely repealed.
We've handled a series of cases involving those that are being persecuted for their faith. They called it terrorism, but they actually use in the indictment itself the word Christianization.
A principle comes and yanks your Bible away.
a teacher became aware that the student was reading from the Bible.
We're here standing for these kids and their families.
Prohibited from meeting with other Christians during recess.
We do have to fight against them when they occur. Otherwise, those abuses will win the day.
This is a fight that you're going to have to be engaged in. It's already a long-term struggle. It is not over.
We are so grateful to the people who prayed for us, and we are so grateful for ACLJ.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. And now, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow.
So the questions being asked on Facebook are interesting. Aren't these federal monuments? What gives the mayor the right to go after them? Are they going to ask for Monticello and Mount Vernon to be torn down also? What's next? Renaming Washington, D.C. was exactly what Logan said. That's the comments coming in on Facebook. And there's a reason why those comments are coming in. Tell people why it's coming in.
Don't give them ideas.
Don't give them any ideas, by the way. They might actually do that.
So the reason this is happening, we've been addressing it for the last half hour, is the organization DC Faces, which is part of the government of the District of Columbia, has put out a list and a bunch of requirements to rename, replace, or not even rename, replace, remove, or contextualize things like the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, amongst many others on this list. Christopher Columbus, sort of the people that are now the biggest target when some of these people are people who helped found this country. And not only that, is they're putting them under the rule of law of 2020 and saying if these people ever violated human rights laws of today, 200 years ago, they should have their names removed. They should no longer be celebrated. And sort of your defense of that is there'd be nothing to be celebrated without some of those people.
Yeah. So
without George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, good luck, America.
Fan, will you explain to people what it would be like in Washington D.C. with these gone? I mean, you live there. I mean, I lived there too, obviously on and off, and half the year usually. I mean, I'm just trying to even visualize this.
Well, it'd be darn near empty, Jay, and there would also be no real celebration of our past because so much of the city is laid out in a way where you actually do literally walk through the history and the formation of our country. Jay, I was glad to see the Facebook commenter ask about how this would actually happen because the only thing that the D.C. mayor can do is use her position on the National Capital Memorial Advisory Commission to recommend the removal of at least the federal monuments. Jay, that would go two places. First of all, it would go to the National Park Service, overseen by the Secretary of Interior. We've already said that he has said this is not going to happen on his watch. But here's the other interesting thing, Jay.
But it's going to be a debate question in the presidential debates. I guarantee it.
100%. But the reason I mentioned that is because I wanted to layer on top of it the congressional level. The hearings would take place in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, Jay, that is chaired by Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and the ranking member, Jay, it's Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Do you think this is going to have resonance with Joe Manchin of West Virginia? If it does, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, Harry, it's going to be a question in the debates. You know it.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I would anticipate is that Joe Biden would have difficulty coming up with a constructive, if not articulate answer, because Joe Biden is being pulled in two distinct directions. And based on the recent past, more likely than not, he will have to side with the left-wingers in his party, or he will lose their support.
Yeah, by the way, it's just been it just broke that the first debate of the president will be for the presidential debate, which will be in Cleveland on September 29th. It will be moderated by Chris Wallace, and I think the second one is Kirsten Welker from NBC. Both of these folks I know. All right,
on September. You said September 29th.
Yep, September 29th.
So that's just a few weeks away.
You realize that the election is less than a month, less than 2 months away.
Yeah, just right around a little more.
It'd be today.
Maybe exactly today? 2 months today?
2 months today, right? Will, am I right?
Sounds
November
right.
3rd. Yeah.
Yeah.
60 days.
Yeah. Just 8 weeks. Let's get through it. Come on.
Yeah, I'm
ready. I'm ready for...
We'll get through it.
I'm interested to see the debates.
Yeah, I'm glad they're having them.
Yeah. I mean, Nancy Pelosi said no debates. Not because of COVID. She said no debates because she didn't think,
But you got a special thing on your Logan Sekulow reprogramming. You're talking about Nancy Pelosi, I understand.
Oh, are we talking about it? I'm sure we will. Yeah. I mean, obviously she was in there getting illegal haircuts.
All right, we're taking a break. When we come back, we're going to take your phone calls. 1-800-684-3110. Andy Economist still with us, Stan, of course, and Professor Harry Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah, and me. And you can find, like you said, the Logan Sekulow Reprogram, my radio show, where we talk about the influence of the liberal elitists on
With a little more of an edge, shall we say.
You can find that on YouTube, youtube.com/Logan Sekulow Reprogram, and all over the internet. We're there.
And thank you to our donors who made August just a tremendous month for us. Hey, welcome everybody. So let me change gears for a moment here. So our Facebook audience just saw kind of a history of the Trump versus Vance cases. We had 3 Supreme Court cases we argued right here in this studio, actually, in May, right over there, right where I'm pointing. And in 2 of them, the congressional subpoenas, we had a complete victory. On the 3rd one, we did not get the absolute immunity we sought, and we did not get the heightened scrutiny we asked for. We did get the court unanimously agreed that the president's entitled to special deference, that he's entitled to raise these constitutional challenges, and that it was remanded back to the federal courts for that. We did that. We filed a suit in the federal court challenging the DA's subpoena, the same subpoena that's been at issue now for over a year, as unconstitutionally overbroad, that it was a fishing expedition, that it was not valid. The district court issued a 103-page opinion against us, said we had no case. But it took them 103 pages to explain it. We filed an application for a stay with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit pending the disposition of the appeal. In other words, don't let them enforce the subpoena while we appeal this case. And the concern, of course, was they were going to do that. We were prepared to go to the Supreme Court. Well, that is not what happened. We do not have to go to the Supreme Court. And I want you to listen to this question by Judge Walker to my counsel on the other side, Carrie Dunn. He was asked this. By the way, we got the stay. Let me clarify.
You need to bury the lead here.
Don't bury the lead.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the stay. It stays in place through the disposition of the Second Circuit. Briefing will take place in September. Argument the end of the month. And probably get an opinion depending on if there's dissents mid-October. I think we've got a good chance of prevailing, and you'll see why in a moment. And then it goes en banc, which is the entire possibility the entire Second Circuit would hear it. I think they would. I think we have a really good chance there. It may never make its way back up to the Supreme Court. But take a listen to this from the argument yesterday.
What I can't understand, however, is how this reaches all 11 of the subpoenaed entities, whether or not they are even in this country. And that, it seems to me, is a broadening of even what the Congress had in mind. And that's what I just have trouble understanding. It has the feeling of overbreadth, but there's no way to measure it. That's the problem that I have.
Well, Your Honor, with respect, this is the breadth of the subpoena here in a financial investigation by our office is actually not unusual at all. And again, if the public record reflects that each of the categories we're talking about has been publicly alleged to be a transaction that involves potential criminal wrongdoing by the organization at issue.
But what's so key here is the DA would not give us a stay of the enforcement of this, Andy, during the appellate process, as if the president wasn't entitled to deference and full appellate review.
Yes, but of course the Second Circuit thought otherwise, and Judge Walker, in a very prescient comment, said, what about overbreadth? How broad can a subpoena from a grand jury be before it is so broad that it brings into its purview so many things that would make it burdensome upon the respondent to answer, and that would get into areas that you don't have to get into and you have no right to get into? And I think that is what ultimately is going to be the death knell of this subpoena, Jay, is that it is so overbroad and encompasses so much material worldwide that the Trump organization and that the president in his individual capacity were involved in, that the Second Circuit is going to say, you narrow this down before we enforce it.
And by the way, the overbreadth, the arguments on the merits were not even up in this. I mean, it wasn't even to be addressed, but this came up also. Again, Judge Walker was only a 3-judge panel, asked my colleague Will Consovoy a very important question also. Take a listen to this, number 5.
It seems to me that what happened was that the Supreme Court, despite its ruling that the subpoena could pass muster on the questions of immunity and a special need, nevertheless said that when it goes back, there are various standards that may come into play, and that is the heightened respect that's due the president, and also the necessarily meticulous review in the case of a president. And what the question I have is, wouldn't the Court of Appeals have to kind of give definition to those concepts on appeal?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the answer is eventually yes, but I don't think so right now. And I think that's a function of the way the district attorney decided to handle the case on remand.
So the important part here is, I think, it is when Judge Walker makes the statement that the Supreme Court said that there is a heightened respect due the president and a necessarily meticulous review in the case of a president. And when the Court of Appeals have to give definition of those concepts on appeal, and I want to be clear, I mean, there's not been a merits decision here, but the New York DA, Andy, was denying us that right because they said you could keep your appeal going, but produce the documents and give them to the grand jury. And the toothpaste at that point is out of the tube. And even if you try to put it back in, you're not going to ever get all of it back in, and it's pretty messy.
No, the district attorney was not really following the spirit, indeed the letter of the law as the Supreme Court of the United States interpreted it, by not giving due deference to the president in this. They want everything. They're going to demand everything. They did not look at it in an overbroad capacity, which is what it really is. And they were called on that by this panel, especially Judge Walker on the Second Circuit, who said, "Why, you haven't given deference to the president. You've just mimicked the subpoena, and you're back again to the overbroad standard that you established before. You didn't do what the Supreme Court told you to do at all, and you're going to get this subpoena stayed, the enforcement of it, and the response to it stayed until the Second Circuit. And I do think it will go in bank. That is to say, the entire Second Circuit is going to hear this, and I think that ultimately, in my view, the president will prevail, Jay."
I'm absolutely convinced of it. Logan?
All right, let's go to the phones. This is obviously about the situation going on in Washington, D.C.
Recast it for everybody.
Yeah, if you didn't know, there was a document circulated today from the District Columbia Facilities and Commemorative Expressions Department from the mayor, and it specifically goes into the replacing, removing, or contextualizing some of the top Washington, D.C. monuments, parks, school names. And look, some of these, as we've said, are controversial and maybe should be adjusted. But you're talking about names like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, the classic founding fathers, the ones everyone knows about. And also, they happen to be the biggest tourist attractions in Washington, D.C. And so if you have a question or comment on that, give us a call, or on the other, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Let's go to the phones, though. Let's go to Julie, who's calling in Iowa. Great state of Iowa, on line 2. You're on the air. Hey, Julie.
Hi. Hi, gentlemen. My question is, why is the cancel culture criminalizing men from the past who were not criminals of their time, but are letting actual criminals of our time do whatever they want?
That really is actually, Julie, a great question.
It's the hypocrisy of all of this, Julie. And look, we talk about this a lot on the reprogram because that's where my frustration comes in. I'm all for people having the right to say whatever they want to say. I'm pretty much an anti-censorship advocate. But when it comes to these kind of situations, you're right. You can't even look the person in the eye. You can't even talk to them because the hypocrisy is so evil and astounding that it's disturbing to your core. This even happened. We're going to talk about this on the reprogram. A website, video game website, GameSpot, big news sites are owned by CBS.
Yeah,
had an ad yesterday for the National Guard. They bought an ad, it ran, and they tweeted it out. Check for more information. They had a gamer who is also a National Guardsman, and then they said, if you'd like more information about join, it's like a recruiting ad. They got slammed, had to delete the tweets because they were saying, people were going after saying, how dare they? This is the most disgusting thing you've ever seen. They're promoting the United States military, and they're also promoting it to children who play video games. Also at the same time, the Biden-Harris campaign announces that they've now put campaign ads. You can actually place a little pretend Biden-Harris sign in Animal Crossing, which is really aimed at kids. I mean, there are a lot of adults that play it. I know maybe too many adults that play it. But it's one of those things you look at and go, and that's praised. The hypocrisy of it is astounding.
Yeah.
That you can't, the fact that a video game news website owned by a major corporation may take money to advertise a wing of the United States military. And that's somehow egregious and offensive because it advertises the military as good guys to kids. I'm so over all of this. It is hypocrisy at its core.
When we come back from the break, I want to ask Harry again to lay out a definition of what this cancel culture is. But then we only got a minute here. And how significant is this cancel culture impacting Congress?
It's very significant, and I appreciate Julie's call. I appreciate Logan's comments because, Jay, this is a city I love. But I tell you right now, I cannot take my family right now to participate in outdoor dining on the streets because mobs are randomly harassing diners. So, look, respectfully to Mayor Bowser, who I've worked with in the past, let's address that. Let's address that rather than moving the Washington Monument because it's a very real issue and it's affecting your city.
I just have to say, because you brought this up and we just had a lot of video game discussion, the mayor's name is Mayor Bowser, which if you are a Mario fan, I mean, unbelievable coincidence. Unbelievable. You couldn't write that monologue. I didn't set him up for that. Mayor Bowser. I can't believe it. Koopa. All right, give us a call, 1-800-684-3110. Get your voice heard on the air. Final segment, Jay Sekulow Live coming up, and then I got to do another hour. So 1-800-684-3110. We'll be right back.
Thanks to your support of the ACLJ, we have had many victories.
The IRS now formally apologizing to Tea Party groups.
The IRS did the right thing by resolving the case with an injunction that mandated a complete change of the IRS nonprofit tax-exempt work as it relates to issue advocacy organization.
If any group feels like they're being targeted, they can go to federal court and bring our case. That's a victory.
It's one of the most significant wins in the ACLJ's history, to take on the IRS and win.
For more than 27 years, the ACLJ has been fighting for freedom and liberty in the United States and around the globe.
These are young people in their 20s and 30s that are doing this. They're fighting for life at a whole new level to beat back the abortion juggernaut. We've got a whole group of young lawyers that are defending them.
Those of us that believe in life know that we're on the right side of history. We understand full well children are children, and they're precious in God's sight, and they're precious in our nation's sight, and they're precious to parents.
But I actually think we're winning. This is one of the social issues we're winning.
The release of Andrew Brunson. He is the American evangelical from North Carolina, held in Turkey for more than 2 years.
They're rushing us to the airport, and there was an Air Force plane that came from Germany that had been on standby. We're flying, and they finally left Turkish airspace. It's like, okay, now we're really out of Turkey and free again.
We're grateful to ACLJ who put it out to these people, they were getting all this out.
All of the people who prayed for us through ACLJ and through your contacts, I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and actually I'm astounded.
We need your help as we continue this work here in the United States and around the world. Join us online at the American Center for Law and Justice at aclj.org.
Hey, welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Taking your call last segment, 1-800-684-3110. We'll also get some Facebook comments in. I want to go to Harry and Andy first here. And Harry, define what are we seeing? This is the cancellation culture being implemented, but let's define it again for everybody so everybody understands what we're talking about.
Well, Jay, increasingly the United States is defined by what divides us. And so we have now succumbed to what might be called identity culture or identity politics. And so that is essentially tearing the nation apart. And much of this, the impetus for this, is grounded in the notion of grievance and victimhood. And I think it represents, at bottom, the miseducation of the American people, particularly young people, at elite educational institutions who have evinced evidence of their hatred for the United States itself. And so if you look at the New York Times with their 1619 project, They essentially claim that the United States was grounded in slavery. Well, they're absolutely wrong, because the Jamestown settlement occurred 12 years before 1619. And so the United States was not founded, for instance, on slavery. But nonetheless, many of these advocates from the Black Lives Matter movement, from Antifa, from left-wing members of the Democratic Party, they believe that the United States founding was wrong, and essentially it must be turned down or removed. In addition to which, of course, they have now turned their attention from monuments to math, to English itself. All of those things have to go, because they represent suppression, subjugation, and victimhood.
And Andy, as a historian, you said this earlier, I think it bears repeating. We don't have a perfect history. These are not perfect men and women. None of us are. And the idea that there was errors, mistakes made, policies that we find now abhorrent, violating our conscience, but this was 200 years ago. And what the New York, D.C. did was say, we're going to apply the D.C. Human Rights Statute from 1977 back to the founding of our country.
Well, you don't do that. You don't rewrite history. History is the story of the change through time. That's what history is. And the history of human reality, the history of the intervention of God in human life, the great event of the incarnation of Christ. All these things are events that occurred. You cannot deny them. What you do from them is you learn from the errors of the past and you try to repeat it. He who does not know history is doomed to repeat it again. You don't condemn, you don't knock down monuments. You understand that they were put up at a time and a place and for a specific reason, and you learn and you look at these as a learning experience, and you don't victimize everybody. You cannot. We're all victims if you look at it that way. The country is a victim-founded country, and we are hypocrites if we keep saying over and over that we've got to change what America is. America is, for all its faults, still the beacon for what is free and just and right in the world. And these statues and these men and these monuments, with all their faults and all their foibles and all the things that they did wrong, nonetheless did right and good and just things. And that is what we should concentrate on, and not the bad traits.
Will on Facebook said, it seems like people are confusing the point of the monuments. Not all of them are to celebrate every action of every person associated. Andy's right. We will remove any semblance of history and the ability to have meaningful conversations. Yeah. Then Kristen on Facebook.
Yeah, Christine, this is an interesting comment. I think this is one that maybe we could help settle people down, but I don't know if we can. She said, is this at a point where legal action can be initiated, or is this such a ridiculous request that it probably won't even get to that point? Well, I'll tell you this first, Christine, if you're watching on Facebook. Some time went into this. This was not like
Logan's holding up the report.
Yeah, you're talking about pages and pages and beautifully graphic designed report.
Serious.
This didn't just come out of thin air. They didn't just write an email that said, "Hey, we should replace the Washington Monument." This is a legitimate, thought out thing from Mayor Bowser, and it's a ridiculous point of view. But is it at the point where real action needs to be taken?
Yeah, this is, and then I can address this. These are federal monuments. And number one, the District of Columbia cannot remove federal monuments. So, in fact, it would take acts of Congress to remove these. But I'm going to tell you, and we'll save the debate part. It's going to come up in the debates, and they will be pressed to take a stand on these issues. But let's talk about it from a legal standpoint. And congressionally, it would take congressional action to remove this in the District of Columbia because D.C.'s Congress is basically the legislature for the D.C.
Exactly correct. There are going to be tiers to this, Jay, and the mayor has said that she is going to be guided by this commission. She set it up and said she is going to advance the recommendations based on this. The things that are within her control, the renaming of schools and parks.
Hold on, Than. When she says, I'm going to move these recommendations, where's she moving them to? She can't take action herself.
Yeah, well, it depends which ones. The ones that are for city schools and city parks, she and the council can work together on those, but you're 100% correct on the federal monuments, and that's really what is the most upsetting to me, because if she wants to advance those recommendations, Jay, she has to use her seat on the National Capital Memorial Advisory Commission to recommend that action. But who would be responsible for implementing that? It'd be the federal government under the National Park Service, headed by the Secretary of Interior, who has said he's not going to do it. She could try to get the Congress to pass a statute, Jay, and she would have to go through the Senate Natural Resources Committee, which is chaired by Lisa Murkowski, and try to get, Jay, you had the confusion before between statute and statute. They could pass a statute to remove the monuments or the statues. Jay, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think she would even get bipartisan support for that. But I would tell you this. This recommendation might seem unbelievable, but Jay, it has to be believable. It's here, and it has the mayor's support.
Logan's right. It's a thick document. It will be a debate question.
Yeah.
That means it could become,
It could take years. It could take 10 years. It could take 20 years. But
we
maybe
get a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic president. It could take 10 minutes.
Right.
I mean, people need to
It's
understand
certainly at least setting, like I said, it may be even it's planting the seed that you may not want to take a selfie with the Washington Monument.
But tell everybody what's coming so that we are offering hope on a historic basis.
From American history point of view, in world history and faith, but specifically American history, and it comes to, we saw this in Chicago with certain political leaders going out and saying that we should abolish history classes for the time being until we can rewrite those history classes. We're going to take action on this. We have a really great new project that I'm excited about. We have an incredible creative team who we've put together, really people who've worked with every major brand in the world of children's entertainment. And we're creating educational entertainment content specifically aimed at elementary aged around there. But the thing is, it can apply to everyone because it's stuff we all need to know. You remember Schoolhouse Rock or anything like that. There's something coming next week. Can't say just yet what. There's a big project from the ACLJ that's going to need your help and support.
But it's great.
And I'll be on the air. One of us will be, and you'll see me talking about it here very, very soon.
I'm really excited about it.
Specifically because of issues like this that will arise, where your children may not be raised, or your grandchildren, to know who George Washington was. I mean,
yeah.
It's hard to think about, but it's true.
I want to say this. I'm really excited about this project that Logan and the team are doing, because at the ACLJ, whether it's in court, whether it's media advocacy, whether it's providing content, that's what we do. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org. Have a good day.